Coming up on The Buck Stops Here.
If you're listening to the doomers out there, 20, 40, 60% of all jobs will be replaced by the AI in the next 3 to 5 years. Making employees 50, 100, 200% faster without redefining their goals just creates a faster hamster wheel. And that leads to massive burnout. I predict that the winning companies won't replace their teams with AI agents only. I think they're going to arm their teams with a fleet of AI co-pilots. I believe that in the long run, a herd of centaurs is better than a pure army of synthetics. Efficiency AI is a short-term survival tactic. Everyone is going to be doing it. But opportunity AI is a 5 or 10-year growth strategy. Welcome back to another episode of The Buck Stops Here. I'm your host, David Maples, and if you've been like me, you've been watching business news very carefully lately. And if you've heard the news about AI, you're imagined that there's been a knock at your door recently, and you open it to see the Grim Reaper standing there, and he's holding a letter that says, your job is next. If you're listening to the doomers out there, 20, 40, 60% of all jobs will be replaced by the AI in the next 3 to 5 years. Now, the reality of it is that there's really two paths in front of us. And I really think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. One is that it's going to create more jobs than ever before in history, new things, because you can't imagine what you can possibly do. And then the other side of things is this kind of apocalyptic future where we're all just basically pets for the machine. I think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, but we'll find out more of that as we walk down this road. The idea with it is a lot of companies have been laying off people lately under what I'm calling AI washing. And according to some stats, 60% of hiring managers are using AI as a smokescreen for what are standard financial layoffs. And they're engaged in what I would consider to be efficiency AI. It's how do you use the most groundbreaking technology of our lifetimes to do the same amount of work with just fewer people? It's a race to the bottom. And let me tell you, you cannot shrink your way to market dominance. It's just impossible. Today, in this episode, I want to address efficiency AI, which is where I believe a lot of companies, especially small businesses, should start. But I really want us to lean into what I'm considering to be AI opportunity. How to use this technology to do exponentially more work with the same number of people. Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, nailed it at a conference last week when he basically said, for companies with imagination, they will do more with more. For companies out of ideas, you're just going to get cut. And by the end of this episode, I want to give you a framework to stop cutting and start imagining, to use AI to unlock entirely new revenue streams. I just got back in town. I was a keynote speaker at the 101 Women in Business Conference, the 6th annual one, and it was down in Louisiana. And I went down there last week, and the title of my talk was The AI Advantage, How Being Small is Your Superpower. And one of the reasons I like going to conferences, especially talking on AI, is that I get to mingle with business owners who are actually kind of the tip of the spear. They're starting to use these things, these different AI systems in their workflow. And I observed a lot of different things. One thing I observed is that people are trying to use AI for everything, and there's no real plan for where to put it in and where it's efficient. I've said before that one of the biggest pieces of consulting advice I give to people is don't use AI for that. In fact, I met someone at the conference who runs a business and is a nurse practitioner. And without saying the details on it, I told her that instead of trying to use AI for her application, to get a virtual assistant. I think that's an easier way for her to start doing that. And it made me start thinking about this efficiency AI piece. And what I want to address, I want to break this episode into kind of 3 pieces. I want to address kind of the bottlenecks. And if you'd like to listen to the episode before this, it'll give you a little bit of overview and framework for part of what I'm going to say. But I'm going to do a deep dive into frameworks and how to remove bottlenecks in your business. And then really early on, what we're looking at is kind of the low-hanging fruit is really kind of efficiency AI. I believe that's where people start. And then opportunity AI is the idea of reimagining things that you're going to do. Now, this episode is part of what we're going to call our AI dominance series. We're not sure how many episodes will be in this section. It could be 20, but right now we've already outlined, I think, 7 or 8 that we're going to have to do. And each one of those is going to delve into a portion of kind of the AI tech stack. And I believe that even for experienced business owners with AI, it'll be useful. Right now on the roadmap, we've got an episode on AI burnout. We've got one on cognitive decline and the creativity tax. We've got one on AI governance. We have another one on AI efficiency and another one on AI opportunity, and a whole episode that delves into shadow AI. And I think where we're going to, and there's one other episode in there, we're going to have to talk about job roles and how reimagining job positions, what that's going to look like for people in the future as we move into kind of this new world. So to start off with this, I want to address what I saw at the conference. I saw, even after talking to the audience, I said, here's how I think people need to start thinking about putting AI in there. I observe people multiple times. It's a conference. People are, if you're running a business, you probably still have to open up your laptop and get some work done at some point during the conference. I looked at all that and I saw that there were some definite challenges, and I watched and I went up and talked to people and I said, how are you using it in AI in your business? How are you using AI in your business? And the answer is there is no real structured framework. A lot of people are using it as a substitute, quite frankly, for what was Google search 10 years ago. The difference is, and something I'm really concerned about, is that everybody was using it as kind of a supercharged Google search. But whereas 10 years ago, when you did a Google search, I feel like most business owners would have at least critically thought about, oh, are these results good or not? A lot of the people I saw using it were just taking whatever the AI said and going off to the races with it. It was like they had asked the wise advisor and they had been given this information. And this is in spite of the fact that 5 to 10% of what the AIs tell you is just patently wrong. The hallucinations are baked into the system. They're part of how these things work. And I thought that was really potentially dangerous. But more than that, I just thought it was really concerning. It really concerned me over how I saw people using it. And I thought to myself, I said, there's got to be a better way to do this. So to start this episode, I'm going to talk about how I see bottlenecks in the business. So in any business owner suffers from the challenge of working in their business and not on their business. How do you get the time to separate time out that you can focus on growing your business, figuring out how to improve your policies and procedures? Because the reality of it is, being in the trenches and doing the things that you do every day and delivering your goods and services is not a way to grow the company selling those goods and services. And so where I want to start out for is what I've talked about in multiple episodes before, is what I call a quick wins matrix. Now, if you're a listener of the Buck Stops Here, or you subscribe to our newsletter, or even in the show notes, we have made a tool that I actually use as the first step whenever I do evaluations on a company for showing people where they can find what I consider their quick wins. Now, initially in your business, there's 4 quadrants. So in these matrices, what you have is you have on one side of it, you've got high impact and low impact. And on the bottom side of the matrices, you have low effort and high effort. So things that are high impact and low effort are what we consider quick wins. Things that are high impact and high effort are major projects. Things that are low effort and low impact are nice to have, and things that are low impact and high effort are distractions. And the reality of it is that most business owners, especially small business owners, don't know how to put these things in the right categories. So, and these all depend on your business. So for some example of what I consider quick wins, and most of these, just to let you know, are efficiency kind of wins. So high impact, low effort are things like meeting summaries, follow-up emails, proposal first drafts, missed call responses, sales call prep, customer inquiry, like triaging, like figuring out what's important to look at, what isn't. And these are things that AI can generally help people to do work with. And the reality of it is that not all of these things fall into the efficiency matrix, but these are not really imagining what the future could look like. So I'm a big Star Trek nerd. I totally am. I love Star Trek. The idea is that in the future, somehow we don't destroy ourselves and we reach a different future. But if you want to be honest, Star Trek is just basically today's humans in a science fiction setting. There's nothing there that would really be alien or really, really different than what we deal with today. Whereas if you go back 1,000 years in history and or not even 1,000, you can go back 600 years to like Florence and to see the Medici, et cetera, in Italy. If you showed them what we were doing now with rocket ships, that's probably understandable. But when you started showing about social media and ways we communicate now, some of these things are not necessarily analogous. And when you start looking at things like quantum physics, string theory, quantum entanglement, these kind of things would seem very, very, very alien. It's not just transporting someone in time and space, and basically it's a social gloss or a metaphor context on top of what's happened. The reason this is very, very important is that when you start talking about imagining a different future, it's a very different future. It's not the way things you do right now. And we're going to talk about that in a minute because I think that in the long run, imagining what I'm considering opportunity AI is a very, very different way of handling things. So here's kind of where I would go to the kind of trap of the efficiency only mindset. So making employees 50, 100, 200% faster without redefining their goals just creates a faster hamster wheel. And that leads to massive burnout. We're already starting to see that in certain industries. And we're seeing that people are starting to feel tired. There is literally a cognitive tax on that for doing more and more work without having breaks. So you gotten 10 times more work done with AI. Yay, that sounds great. But you're exhausted. The thing is that at the end of the day, is that you really want that mental horsepower to not just be managing the agents. So one thing that's happened now is we've taken writers and now they've become editors. When the thing they were really good at, what their personal superpower was writing creative content. There's a new study that came out very recently that they took a whole bunch of writers and they took 2,100 people who did writing for work, etc., and they had them get feedback from teachers, etc., and then write their final drafts, etc. And then they also did the same thing with AI. Now AI is now helping you either write a first draft or it's giving you feedback on your first draft. And what it came down to is that overall, the writing quality that was AI assisted overall was slightly better than what the humans did on their own, but it all looked the same. Let me repeat that. It all looked the same. The creative ideas, that bell curve had become much steeper. You didn't have a distribution of ideas from these human beings. What you had was a very narrow slice of 2,100 people who all turn in the same paper. And that is a real danger with AI. So why am I talking about that? Because just making people more efficient instead of letting them have the creative freedom to write the things that really were interesting or what other humans like to read, just because it was more efficient did not necessarily mean that overall the quality was better. On an individual one-on-one basis, the overall quality, the output was better that was AI assisted, but the overall diversity in the content that was generated was much, much, much worse. So this is leading to kind of AI burnout. If you're telling everybody, like, if what made you special in writing or doing marketing messages, etc., that really stood out was this particular thing, we are now kind of dumbing that down. Hyper automation in the efficiency only mindset removes what we call discretionary non-compliance. That's the human ability to kind of bend rules and show empathy, which clients actually want. So one of the challenges is that let's say you're on you take any kind of, I'll take it. I just flew and I was dealing with airport delays for the TSA. When you have a delay in something you need handled, you don't want an AI bot that literally always complies the same way every single time. That may sound really, really cool to the bean counters and the corporations, but for individuals, you want to actually talk to another human being who can understand your plight. What's the point in having humans in an organization if it's just about compliance? Sometimes they can tell you're having a really bad day, and the AI bots aren't going to pick that up. And that customer service agent who ends up upgrading you or is just kind to you about what's going on or asks you like, hey, I'm sorry you're dealing with this with your family, that can turn someone who was just a traveler into an evangelist for your company. And so the challenge with efficiency only stuff is that everything is boiled down to a number. And human beings hate that. People who are putting AI in places where human empathy is important. I know this because we built some tools to have people to automatically review phone calls, etc. People hate that. We've literally heard messages where people are like, I will never do business with your company. Now, maybe it doesn't matter to you. Maybe that is that efficiency only thing. But I think that's the challenge with the efficiency only process. I predict that the winning companies won't replace their teams with AI agents only. I think they're going to arm their teams with a fleet of AI co-pilots. I believe that in the long run, a herd of centaurs, that's humans working with AI, is better than a pure army of synthetics. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe in the long run, that's not what it wins out. But so far, what we're seeing from the current crop of LLMs is there is something that is lost in the process. Something is wrong in the matrix. Now, I'm not saying that these things aren't bad things to have. There is real value being provided in enterprise by some of these AI things. However, I think you're going to have a huge backlash against it on humans. I still think a herd of centaurs is vastly superior to an army of synthetics. That's what I currently believe. I believe that the best of both worlds is better than either one world without the other. And the question is, how do we exist in that world? So first thing I think any business owner should do is go use our quick wins matrix, use the software that we wrote for this process to at least give you an idea, if you don't know where to start in your business, where to put it in there. And what I see when I was at this conference is people trying to do everything with AI. They're trying to put AI into every little piece of what they're doing. And the reality of it is some of those things give you positive return on investment. A lot of them do not. And what you want to do is you want to find the things that are replicable in your business, because if I can get rid of a bottleneck that's costing me 4 hours a week, I've got more time to do other things. When I'm trying to put AI in a whole bunch of places, I might hit this one bottleneck, but I'm probably going to hit a whole bunch of other things that are probably distractions. And I think as important as the quick wins are to identify, I think in your business, figuring out what those distractions are. Fully autonomous sales systems sound amazing. They are totally a distraction. They are not ready for prime time yet. We're not even close. Customizing a tool that's got no workforce fit with what your company actually does. Automating low value tasks that no one cares about. These are the kind of things. Overbuilding a chatbot. What is that really doing for you? It should have a very limited role in what you're doing in the organization. So what I want to talk about next is I want to move into kind of transitioning to this opportunity AI. What does it actually mean? I think the first thing is I think you need to audit tasks in your organization, not job roles, not jobs. You need to figure what tasks in your organization and break your roles into automatic tasks. What new value as an organization can we create with the 40% in time we just saved these people? And I'm going to say something here that's not popular, totally not popular. Give a third of that time back to the person in your organization. You're worried about AI burnout? I totally am. They need time to rest their brain. They are not just powered by Red Bull and time. They are human beings. You need to understand that they need time to relax. And if they're doing more work, give them back some of that time. If we start implementing AI at very high levels, I've thought about it in my own organization. How can I give back this time? Is it more time off? Is it time to do something fun? I don't know what it is yet, but I know that just filling up that time with other things is a good way to burn your team out. And I've thought about this a lot lately. I probably haven't implemented it the way I really should have yet, but it's something I'm really been thinking about a lot lately. I think that in the 20th century, we had this kind of amorphous, formless blob that we called management. It was this managerial blob. It was 20th century bureaucracy at its best. But now individual contributors, if they've been given the right tools and corporate governance, it's going to be another episode. We're going to have an entire episode on that. They can now build prototypes on their own, give them some time to do it on the clock, and they don't necessarily need to wait for budget or approval, but they've got to have the right tools to do that. And that's kind of an advanced thing to do. That's an advanced process of changing in the system. Non-code builders, empowering kind of marketing, sales, and HR to build their own internal software to solve bottlenecks. Now, remember, I think for small businesses, a lot of this is how do we get to there? And this is where, hey, I'd love for you to consult with me. If you do the quick wins assessment, you'll find information there if you want to request getting a paid consult with me. This is the kind of thing that you probably need help putting into your organization in a way that you can do. I always make sure we have the governance pieces in place first, but that's how I want people to address and look at these things. I want to go to the last piece of this, which I'm calling the expansionary question. Ask your team if you had if you had half a dozen AI interns working 24/7 for you, what new product or service could we offer tomorrow that is impossible today? What could we do differently that's not just replacing what people do in the organization? How could we simplify some things for people in the organization? If there's a bottleneck, if there's a problem with how people use a certain system or process or tool in an organization, how would we change that? How would we generate something that we couldn't even offer today? I'll give a case in point. I'm invested in several other companies. One of these companies is a cleaning company. And the answer is, what are we not giving our clients that we never even thought about giving them before? Right now, we sometimes we take pictures of every job when we get them done. What if we sent those to the client every single time? What if we sent them the checklist showing them being checked off every single time? Now, these sound like expansions of what we're doing now. This is not something we offer to our clients. Now, I don't want to add this into our mix because it costs me money and time. But what if I did this in a way that was automated, it was seamless, and it just made the client feel better? Would that deepen our relationship with the client? Would that deepen how we work with those organizations? And I think the answer to that is yes. But this is really where you have to kind of play. You have to grab that cardboard box when you were 5 again and imagine it as a lemonade stand. Imagine it as a race car. You have to think about, what could I do with this that I've never thought about doing today? How would the future look with the new processes and technologies that are possible? And I think Jensen said this correctly. If you're out of ideas, you're just going to get cut in this new future. I think that's really what it comes down to. So here's your homework for this episode. Actually, before I get there's one other piece I'd like to say here. There's an idea that's called the economics of unlimited demand. Human desire is infinite. There is no fixed amount of work. If you produce more value, the market will absorb it. And in that, there's a way to differentiate yourself that was not possible 5 years ago. So the big thing to take away from this episode is that efficiency AI is a short-term survival tactic. Everyone is going to be doing it. But opportunity AI is a 5 or 10-year growth strategy. So this episode has homework. So what I'd like you to do is pick one department in your organization or business this week. I'd like you to go in and use the quick wins matrix. This is free to you as a subscriber to our newsletter, to at least kind of take a look at what you're doing in your organization. I want you to draw that quick wins matrix on a whiteboard if you don't do it through our quick wins software. And I want you to get those tasks that are in that quick wins category. And I want you to figure out how to delegate them to an AI in the next 2 weeks. So that's what I would like you to do. And with that extra time that you're going to save in the following 2 weeks, set up a consult with me. No, I'm kidding. But really, you could set up a consult with me. But all that being said, what I was really thinking about was, all right, now that we've saved some time, let's give some time back to our employees and let's start looking at what is next. Do we look at the major projects next? What do we put into the organization? How do we start imagining in our team again? And as they get more familiar with these different AI tools, they're going to have more thoughts on how we can implement them later. And in any company that has a staff that is really conversant with AI is going to do much better in the following, 24 months. So with that, I want to thank everyone for listening to this episode of The Buck Stops Here. So how we're going to break this out next is for these AI dominance episodes. We are going to, in the next episode, I want to really hit on AI governance next. It's not the coolest of topics, but the reality of it is that in the previous talk I gave, I talked about having breaks in your organization and how breaks actually let you go very, very fast. I feel before you really get too far down the road into AI efficiency and AI opportunity, I think you really need to look at AI governance next. And then the follow-up episode will be about shadow AI. We'll talk about how that works in the organization. And then eventually we'll come into a couple of deep dive episodes where we talk about the efficiency pieces. We'll talk about the opportunity pieces in more depth. At the end of this, we're going to hit off with a couple episodes on cognitive decline, creativity taxes, and AI burnout, and how you really want to deal with that in your organization. Again, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please give us 5 stars. on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you enjoy this video, drop us a note in the comments. Let us know what you thought of the episode, or let us know any questions you'd like us to address in a future episode. Who knows, we might read your comment live on air. Again, I'm David Maples. Go out there, do good work, and have a great week.